Hello, CH is true, and this is the conclusion of my industrial republicanism series. We'll have parts 1 and 2 linked below. And then at the very end, I'm going to switch gears and talk about something that will be more for my regular subscribers. So if you're not and you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, please go and watch them below. You're heartily encouraged to do that. They'll be linked in the box down there. Special shout out, by the way, to Stephen P. Rice. He's an academic who wrote a book called Minding the Machine. I think that he makes a lot of points that are of interest in the Industrial Republicanism series. Of special interest would be his chapter on the Mechanics Institutes of the 19th century. Very important reading. I heartily encourage it. Okay, the economy as an electric grid. What kind of a goofy idea is that? Well, it's really very simple. Thought exercise for you. If I were to have if I were to have a blackout, heaven forbid, and the blackout had every single house offline, but they managed to get 92% of the houses online. They get 95% of the houses online. Maybe they only get 90% of the houses online, and they suddenly were to declare that it's a great success because the electric grid is working fine. And not only is the electric grid working fine, but we have so many gigawatts and terawatts, we just don't know what to do. We're overflowing. We're selling to the foreign market. We're able to upgrade, to computerize the electric grid, and we're able to have transformers that are just Bafo transformers. They're Sacco Bafo. And everything's glossy and everything's made to look nice. And the fact that we have so many homes without electricity is actually necessary for the electric grid. It's actually presented as being something that is good for the electric grid. You would be very, very skeptical. You would say, hey, wait a minute. Even if I'm one of the homes with power, the anxiety of tomorrow being counted as, well, okay, 8% of homes without power is a good idea. Therefore, tomorrow that home without power might get power, but I might get my power cut off. If we had rolling blackouts or just regular blackouts, we would not say that the electric grid is running great. We would not say that freedom is on the move. We would not say that anybody who questions the electric grid is un-American. We would say, let's get an electric grid with all homes attached to it and powered right. There'd be no excuses. And yet when it comes to the economy and unemployment, well, what do we have? We have the corporate press making all kinds of excuses. Under all Democratic and Republican administrations, it doesn't matter. We have, and the other thing is if you had regular outsourcing of electrical services to foreign countries, you would also be complaining. And yet we have regular outsourcing of jobs to foreign countries. So when you hear an economist, one of these bought and paid for economic experts, or when you hear a politician, or when you hear a bankster, or where you hear a Federal Reserve person, and they're talking about the economic system, just think of it as an electric grid. Note the comparison. My idea of the Tesla financial system, I kind of call it that. I don't believe Tesla was right about everything. I mean, obviously my Einstein shirt, he was wrong about relativity, but he was a genius and he deserved some credit to have a debt-free financial system named after him. Let's say that it's not viable, and let's say that economic republicanism or a mixed system is not viable. Fine, but what is viable? In fact, that's my question that I'm going to leave with. How do we run our electric grid called the economy and run it well? Run it democratically and run it accountably and run it well. Now, there are some objections to my ideas that I will note. One could come from left-wing, the left side of the spectrum, from anarchists perhaps, or from classical Marx, pre-Leninist, libertarian Marxists, humanistic Marxists, who might say that the whole idea of having a technocratic elite is problematic, and I would say I could note their objection. But it is what we have. So if I'm going to have a technocratic elite, at least I want them to act like technocrats and not act like apologists for stupidity. If you're going to have experts, let them be experts. If you want to talk about something evolving beyond that towards greater, beyond industrial republicanism to full industrial democracy, and by the way, republicanism isn't the Republican Party, it's the earlier classical definition of it. But to go beyond that to democracy in the full sense, fine. But let's find out how to do that then. And that's a scientific question. It's not wishing for it or having a state that withers away or some nonsense like that. Find out how to do it and do it. My other objection came from a very intelligent, a person on the right, an Ayn Rander, an objectivist. He calls himself an anarcho-capitalist, but I don't think there's such a thing. But okay. He talks about, well, I have all this self-ownership. And I say, how come it is that I hear the loudest cries for self-ownership from children, not from adults? Yes, I believe in self-ownership. I do. But as Aristotle noted, the free citizen is one who's in community. And this, the classical Democrats and the classical Republicans noted, the Founding Fathers noted, and the 19th century anarchists even noted. Even Ayn Rand herself, well, that's complicated. But anyways, this, I don't want to beat up on him. He was very polite, but I found, you can read the exchange on the Industrial Republicanism video. So I say, if we're going to have a system like we have, let's at least have it be run by smart people for the sake of the people. So this ends the Industrial Republicanism series. For those who haven't seen 1 and 2, please go down below and watch them. This is a public service announcement now for regular subscribers. I'm going to be ending the political thing that's gone on a little long and returning to the very beginning of this channel, which was logic and philosophy, maybe not the math so much. For those of you who are not so interested in that and you want to unsubscribe, I wish you well. Certainly, you know, it's been a good run. I have a lot of reasons for it. One thing is I feel like I've made my point. And if there's some great political point to be made, I'm going to trust that some other person on the planet will make it. You can't rely on one person for enlightenment in these matters. So I'm going to hold my tongue and know that trust that my fellow humanity will have my back. It's been a good run for many, many years now. Before I was on YouTube, I was involved with, you know, defending our freedoms and that type of thing. But it's starting to a point where my life is shifting and I need to adapt with it. So this will be my very last political point that I'll make. And that's about the issue of privacy, EMPs, Faraday cages, that kind of thing. There's a lot on the very right-wing end of YouTube about this. And so the problem about EMPs and Faraday cages and that kind of thing, a lot of progressives tune out and they say, well, you know, they're kind of macho guys or survivalists, they're tough guys. And I'm a thinker, an intellectual, and you know, an academic or whatever. And so I'm not going to concern myself with it. And I think that that's very unwise, to construct your sense of identity around what you don't do and around some sense of what you're not. If there's truth in something, there's truth there. And there is truth in the concern about EMPs, electromagnetic pulses. And if you have electronics, I would protect it with a Faraday cage. Not only that, the police now have the ability to see inside homes, which they use with or without warrants. Now, that's a whole privacy and constitutional question around that. But it's also the case that if they have it, then there may be private parties that might have it as well, that can afford it. And so maybe in this brave new world of less privacy than we've ever had before, even under monarchies, even under old King George, we actually were freer in a lot of ways. Shocking, I know. But maybe having your home protected by a good Faraday cage, you know, or your room or something like that, that might be something to look into. You know, if the cops show up with a warrant and tell you to remove it, then in that case you have a constitutional question on your hands and a court case. But at the very least, to have it there is your protection for privacy, liberty, and security. So, this is CH is True, making my final goodbye statement on that subject. So the next video will be on logic, philosophy, or that kind of thing. So, thank you, and have a good day.